I gotta get my timer up.
Oh yeah, I got my phone right over here. No cardboard sign right now though.
Hmm.
Don't be disappointed.
No, I'm disappointed.
I have to find it. We're already live right now, so people can hear all of this, but I moved with that cardboard sign from season 1. I just don't know where I put it since the move. Now I'm in a new place. But it's here somewhere.
We gotta find it.
We will find it. It's just a matter of when that day will occur. We'll have a celebration for it.
We should frame it.
Honestly, we should make refrigerator magnets or something too. You can take a picture of the cardboard sign.
Yeah. We could make mugs.
I would definitely buy a mug that had that on it. The
That
podcast will be starting
yeah.
soon with like my cut off like cardboard, and that's why
Right.
Kim was giving me so many issues too. So I was putting vitamin E on my hands all the time, so it like covered the cardboard
Oh,
and vitamin
I
E.
remember
It
that.
looked
Yeah.
real sketchy. It wasn't great, but
I
it
remember
worked for us.
the vitamin E.
Yes. Now my
Yes.
skin's doing much better. In case
Look
anybody
at
was
those hands.
wondering, look at
They're
that intact.
glowing.
Thank you. Thank you. Could be a hand
Hi.
model over here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome
Welcome.
back. This is Ignited, Season 2, Episode 2. We are talking about Eric Toshalis' book, Make Me, and we're talking about Chapter 1. You want to do our, like, whole send-off, or it's not send-off,
Our
our
whole
send-on?
formo. Is it called a send-on? Is that a
No,
thing?
I just made that up.
I love that, though. This is
Thanks.
also a new part of our vocabulary, our send-on. Yes. Let's do our full-blown send-on. This time I bet we're actually going to be in sync. You ready?
Oh, no. Okay, hold on.
Oh,
We're going to do the whole thing?
let's do
I'll
the
do it.
whole thing. All right.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn,
I'm Brittany.
and we are the
The
Ignited
Ignited
Podcast.
Podcast.
That wasn't even close. When you actually hear our podcast audio, guys, you have no idea how many times Brittany and I tried.
It was 7 minutes.
Yeah, you're probably hearing it and you're like, it's still not great.
Hey, we did our
That was the
best.
best. That was the best contender that we had.
Yeah. I every time I hear it, I'm like, huh. It brings me
Right?
joy.
Also, apologies if you hear a leaf blower in the background. My neighbor decided to take care of their leaves today, so here we are.
Happy fall.
Right? Happy fall. So, yeah, let's start diving in, Britt. And I think since you picked this book, it only makes sense for you to do the first summary.
2 minutes, right?
2 minutes on the clock. Let me know when you're
Okay.
ready.
Ooh. All right.
I love how we stretch.
I know.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Are you going to put the timer up? I like to see it. Thanks. Okay, so
Ready
chapter
for you.
1. Chapter 1 of Eric Toshalis' book, Make Me, dove into understanding student resistance and how it's not about seeing resistance as just another behavior to control. It's about recognizing it as a signal, as a way to the way to communicate and learn to read the resistance and the behavior with a level of sophistication that we really aren't taught in school. And so it's about understanding resistance rather than reacting to it out of frustration or trying to discipline it. We're trying to read it. He discussed the students who resist, who push back, disengage, or just like outright refuse the advice that we give them, even though we think it's like, sound and grand and it'll change their life. They're just like, no, bro, I'm not doing that. And they put on their hoods and go about their day. Well, often we're taught to view resistance as defiance or disruption, but in this book, specifically in this chapter, Toshalis really makes a case for that resistance can be engaged and interacted with, and we can teach our students how to resist in more productive ways that can potentially change the system that they're resisting to. So this chapter asked, why do students resist? And he discusses that resistance is rarely random. It's typically rooted in experiences,
Oh,
relationships,
that's your time.
inequities, or unmet needs.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
True,
Oh,
true.
okay.
Well done, Britt.
Thanks.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
2-minute summary.
Let's do this.
3, 2, 1. Go.
All right. So in chapter 1, it goes into why we should even be examining resistance in school. And what I really like about this book already is just the fact that the author makes it more narrative for us getting into it. So like they start off with this story of a child named Javier who we all probably could relate to some kind of experience like this, where a kid is disrupting the classroom and they're resisting your pleas to please listen, to please engage. And so he then talked about why he wanted to create this book, because this resistance that he felt from the child turned him into the kind of teacher that he did not want to be. Like he got into the profession to want to help kids and to be a voice for them, to help them see their power. And here he was yelling at kids. So I'm really excited for this book because it's going to dive into, I believe, why resistance seems so triggering for us. He also talked about how we're going to be looking at different kinds of resistance. So, resistance where it's a behavior that differs from, alters, inhibits, or prevents the general direction or intention of an activity in the classroom or school. How it could be a verbal or nonverbal communication that withdraws from, questions, critiques, refuses, or refutes a perspective, a norm, or knowledge, or an implication presented by the educator, by peers, or the school. Or how it could be any situation in a school setting where the child decides not to comply with an explicit or implicit expectation. And the book is going to be broken down into 4 different categories: the theoretical, the psychological, political, and pedagogical, because according to De Chalice, he said we need all 4 of these lenses to be able to really shape our understanding and how we approach resistance. And how ultimately, he's going to be arguing a contradiction. How when we engage student resistance, we should neither demand that students comply nor comply with students' demands. And I'm really excited to see the way he unpacks this for us.
That was so good.
Thank you. You know, I try. I'll be here all week.
That was like so well articulated. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. No, I try. So
Okay.
at this point, it's where Brittany and I dive into our favorite quotes or any comments from you. If you are watching this in live time with us, you're welcome to leave any comments, feedback, takeaway, questions on our most recent Thought Bubble post for that chapter, and we'll bring those questions to the podcast. For today, though, it's going to be just Brittany and I talking through some of our favorite quotes. So, Brittany, what are some of the favorite quotes that you've picked from this reading?
Okay, so I have 2. The first one is I didn't do the page number though. Oh no. But I'll just read it.
Yeah.
It's about who we are as educators, what we think is important, what we accept as true, and what we do to our students ostensibly in the name of education, motivation, encouragement, discipline, care, and accountability.
Yeah.
So it's about what we do to our students that we do under an understanding that it's in, and I'm putting this in quotations if you're listening, in students' best interest.
Mhm.
And in this chapter, he talks about how we can be so embedded in the system and prioritizing student compliance over deeper learning, engagement, and relationships that can lead us to taking these actions and treating human beings in a way that we normally wouldn't, or we shouldn't
Yeah.
treat others. Humiliation, uh, degrading them in public, embarrassing them, and using punitive practices, especially if those punishments are too severe for the behavior that was displayed.
Hmm.
So when we justify these actions through the beliefs that we've come to believe as true for us and what education looks like and what education means in the context of public education and the school system as we know it, we can use or have norms that are harmful, and we need to analyze those. We need to really reflect on those because it could be, or it is, it's not, it could be those reactions, those the way that we treat our students are often counterproductive when we're trying to reduce behaviors,
Yeah.
especially if the behavior is rooted in resisting the system, because we then become a part of the system that they're resisting.
Hmm.
And so to it motivates them to behave more because it's a direct resistance to our
Or
authority.
to misbehave more, right? Because it's the
Right,
resistance.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then the well, let's talk about how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think it's true. I think we were also kind of talking about similar concepts to this even before the live call started. Like, we have so many systems in place in school where our goal is to do good when we actually end up doing harm with those systems. It's like the right inspiration, but a negative implementation that can really screw up all the stuff that we're trying to create and do. So I see that, and I'm excited to see the way that we're going to be able to challenge and acknowledge resistance and also move forward with it, to help us make our schools a place where kids don't want to resist learning.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, like, I don't
Or
want kids coming to school but not wanting to be there, or
mhm,
teachers coming to school and not wanting to be there. And when you think
right.
about the things that make them not want to be there, well, what can we change about that? Like,
Mhm,
who said we have to have this be the case?
mhm,
It's really morphed into um, some negative institution for a lot of kids in a lot
mhm.
of places.
Yeah. Especially for kids who have parents that had negative
Yeah,
experiences with school.
and the cycle
Um,
continues.
mhm. And then the second quote is, "At the meta level, this book stands against the backdrop of relentless pathologizing that pervades our culture's depictions of and rhetoric about youth. Our kids these days are marketed to as hapless consumers, exploited as cheap labor, recruited as cannon fodder, feared as criminals in the making, objectified as sex symbols, over medicated as unruly patients, and dismissed as mindlessly self indulgent. Understood as subhuman, they are to be controlled. And to this, the observation that adults often project their own anxieties and desires onto those whose lives are still mostly in front of them. Jealous, anyone? And it's no wonder the mechanisms and institutions we create to serve youth seem more guided by distrust than anything else. And I think this is super powerful because how often are we talking about classroom management and the conversation gets turned into discussing all the things that the kids will do wrong?
Hmm.
We are entering the classroom with a premeditated mindset that the kids are going to want to disrupt, want to lie, want to distract, want to get away. We have all of these negative preconceived notions of what students are, or how they're going to act, who they are. And when we walk into the classroom with those beliefs, how are we not going to use negative, um I can't say negative reinforcers, but how are we not going to react negatively to student behavior? We primed our minds
Yeah.
walking into the situation that these kids are going to try to cause us stress, and our job is to prevent them
Well,
from causing
I think
stress.
it's difficult too because it's so much stress.
Yeah.
It's not even just the kids. Like even today when I showed up, I can't speak. Even today when I showed up for school,
Mhm.
like the kids were fine, but my email for coverage came in and I found out that I had no special ed support for the day because there were meetings and things like that. And then I found that there's an assembly scheduled for tomorrow that I forgot about. And like the scheduled programming you have, when what your expected reality is doesn't happen, that sends you to your emotional brain. And how
Mhm.
frequently do teachers have that happen to them? Where, oh,
All
that
the time.
person you were relying on is not actually going to be there,
Mhm.
or anything you need is not going to be there. We put teachers in a state of constant insecurity. And that's where the emotional brain's going to thrive.
Yep.
And then we can even go down to the survival brain. Um, and yeah, I think so. I think teachers are coming in very triggered, and oftentimes rightfully so, because they go through
Mhm.
a lot of shiz during the day.
Mhm.
But something I wanted to share that's really helped in my classroom with building that trust and that unconditional positive regard with students is saying they will. So especially if you have kids who like to rat on each other for doing things like, oh, this person like took my pencil. I'm like, okay, they will give it back. They'll give it back.
Mm.
Or this person's playing this game. They're gonna stop.
Mhm.
And I've noticed a difference in the kids responding to that. Like when I just say like no, it becomes a bit more of a power struggle or knock it off or
Mhm.
anything like that. But if I say no, they're going to, they will. Of course they
Mhm.
will. That's what they do. They listen. They'll
Mhm.
do that. It speaks that trust into the student.
Yeah.
And trust, I think I have so many content ideas to talk about trust. I feel like that is one of the most under talked about things in education. The
Mhm.
importance of us needing to build trust with our students. Like they have to be able to trust us. And
Mhm.
it's not going to be something we walk into. And that's okay. And
Mhm.
being okay with that is a process because I think we want kids just blindly to accept us and accept everything we're saying because we're the authority figure.
Yeah.
But even like for us with our authority figures, like we know how to play the game. We
Mhm.
know how to be in the room and navigate that relationship, but doesn't mean we trust.
Right. Or
And
respect.
yes, and that's what we have to
Mhm.
teach too. I
Yeah.
believe that respect is something people give. I don't think you
Mhm.
earn it. I never enforce it. And
Mhm.
trust is something people give. So it's on us to figure out how to create that relationship and that dynamic where kids will want to trust, they will want to respect. And that's very hard to do when you're coming into school triggered every single day.
Yeah. Um, I had a good point. I should have written it down. So I do want to touch on something that you said when you were talking about they will, right? That is a really good method to bring the feeling of unity
Hmm.
and to motivate the student to cooperate because it's the group.
Yeah.
Like they will. Like they'll get off. They'll rejoin. Like
Hmm.
um and positively framing that too just reduces the level of resistance. But there was something else. I'm sure I'll remember it as we
It'll
talk.
come back. Interrupt me
I
when
gotta
it
get a
does.
Post-it.
Right? I have my notes app going up here. That's what you got to
Oh,
do. That's a
man.
season 1 error, Brittany. You got to write
Oh,
that stuff down.
man, right.
We're in season 2 now. Now it's
I
the big
know.
leagues.
We're seasoned. We're seasoned.
Exactly. All right. Well, let me share my quote then. I have 2 as
Okay.
well. This one comes from page 2, and it's kind of what I referenced in my summary. But it reads, "And I'm that guy who went into teaching because I was going to be the kind of educator who inspired kids, like Javier, to find their voices, see their power, and make the world their own. And now I was confronting the idea that I was a fraud and a failure, one who may have silenced and alienated Javier, if not many others, just for a few moments of obedient silence." And I picked that one because I felt it so much this week because I shared on Instagram too. I had such a rough moment on Monday. Now it's Thursday. I had such a rough moment where my authoritarian first 7 years of teaching just came right back. The ghost of classroom management past entered my classroom and it sucked. And like I typically are very rarely leave school feeling drained like that. Like I'm tired because I'm performing all day, but it's a different kind of fatigue when you're trying to evoke compliance versus when you're trying to understand and create a community and create cohesion. Because even on my hardest days of conscious classroom management, which I've been using for the past few years, I still feel successful and I feel like we're taking a step forward. But on that day, I went home and I did not feel like that. And I also felt shame. And so I related to that quote because I could feel that shame and that failure that the teacher felt, being like, oh my gosh, I just lost my cool on kids. And talking to a lot of teachers and the comments and the DMs and my programs, I'm sure yours too, Brittany. Like we all feel this at some point because that's not the kind of person we want to be. It's not why we joined this profession and why we're still here. But it is this cycle within us that we have to break. And we're not perfect, like even me, like I'm one of the people on this podcast right now. I've been doing this business for a minute and, we still have moments because we're human. So it's about navigating those things. And as you told me earlier this week too, Brittany, to give yourself some grace. Everything is a learning opportunity if you let it be.
Yeah, absolutely. And reframing our thoughts to embrace that, like reframing our thoughts to embrace that mindset is so powerful, inside and outside of the classroom. That's a huge concept
Yeah.
or thinking pattern in Buddhism, is that everything is an opportunity, and to shy away from judging or labeling things good or bad, because at the end of the day, we don't know what is good or bad.
No.
That nobody can predict the future. So I think that when it comes to um, changing our method with classroom management in the classroom, you definitely have to carry a open mindset and understand that everything is practice.
Yeah.
Everything is everything is practice. We're
And
growing every day.
I think you said something like that too, because I called Brittany afterwards. I was like, "Oh, Brittany, I have to talk to you. I screwed up." And I think the first words were like, "Oh, you're gonna do some great modeling of reflection tomorrow, then, huh? It's a great opportunity for it." And
Yeah.
you also said like that kind of modeling is what leaders need to do. We need to
Yes.
be able to take accountability and own our mistakes, and then move on productively.
Yeah. And I was not born with that mindset. That developed through, a year of studying Buddhism and listening to the Secular podcast, which is fantastic if you are interested in Buddhist theory and philosophy, and teachings. The Secular Buddhism podcast is great. But that's a year of listening to that podcast, researching Buddhism, um, practicing the mindsets, researching mindfulness, and creating habits for my thoughts
Yeah.
so that I would have habitually more positive reactions to situations that normally would send me spiraling. And it's totally doable. It's totally doable.
It's the
But
rewiring of your brain.
it is, and it takes work. Like
Yeah.
how we Ash and I were talking a little bit ago about that this is a year-long process.
Mm-hmm.
Implementing, switching to a classroom management system that is relational and positive and collaborative problem solving, um, and putting away punitive practices. It is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy. It's necessary, especially with
Yeah.
the political landscape that we've found ourselves in,
Mm-hmm.
where you have two people that are going to potentially lead the country and they're just attacking each other right and left on YouTube ads for what seemed like 6 months. like
Yeah.
we as teachers, we are shaping our future, and we have to step away from the negative punitive practices in the classroom that does nothing but create anxiety and frustration and
Mm-hmm.
anger and resentment. We have got to replace it with joy and kindness and empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
We've got to.
No, I agree. And we have to give teachers flexibility to be able to do those things as well effectively.
We need leadership who embraces it.
That too. That too. Okay. Let me read my next one.
Okay.
This one, it's my last one, and it comes from page 8, and it's talking about when kids resist. So it says, when students sometimes resist those attempts, it can be frustrating or disappointing or infuriating for the adults. But if we respond from frustration more than curiosity, if we use discipline more than inquiry, we squander one of the most precious insights our students give us. Resistance is a message that something isn't right. An educator needs preparation, courage, and practice to hear that message and channel it into something productive. Doing so changes students, our relationship with them, the context of that relationship, and us. In other words, how we make students makes us. And I think that's powerful right there. And it also made another memory come up into my head from this week too, where I had these two kids sitting behind, one kid's in the front, one kid's behind them. And this kid behind them, the water bottle kept hitting the kid in the front. And so the kid takes the water bottle, picks it up, and throws it across the room. And I'm like, oh, yeah, here we go.
I
And
miss teaching so
right?
much.
First reaction, immediately, throw. I've talked to Brittany, we're working through our impulses this year. That's my mission for the year. And so, of course, my first reaction is what the heck, my guy? But when I got curious, I was like, okay, so what went on? And apparently, this kid's water bottle kept going into their back, and it was driving them crazy. And I was like, so did you ask if they could move the water bottle? No. And I'm like, okay, well, there's our next action step for next time. But if you never have those conversations and unpack it, and you just tell the kid oh, bad child, don't do that, or here's your punishment, we never actually tell them what to do differently, and they'll just get punished. Right. And then next time that water bottle taps their back, it'll be another rocket.
Yeah. So it was something that you said a couple minutes ago that made me think of a Zaretta Hammond quote.
Ooh, I love
and it. Yeah, Zaretta Hammond wrote culturally responsive teaching in the brain. And she, in a lecture that she recently did, I think at Harvard, she says the trap that our students often find themselves in is that the teachers who are standing in front of them were able to be successful in the system the way it is, so that the teachers in the system were able to navigate, find success, maybe even enjoy school. And then those teachers teach students who are far removed from that experience, and they can't empathize with the resistance. Or maybe they can.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, They can empathize with, and I believe, truly, I believe that 99% of the teachers out there do empathize with the resistance,
Hmm.
but they don't understand it because they didn't live it. And when I talk to teachers who because I dropped out of school, I hated school, I was very poor, and I'm neurodivergent, so I struggled a lot with school, and when I talk to other teachers who come to me and they're like, "Me too," just like they have very similar experiences as me, uh, they they don't struggle with student behavior as much, especially the behavior that is resistant behavior,
Mm.
because they understand it in a way that leads them to using more proactive responses and empathizing, reacting with empathy first, and being able to have that conversation with the student and get on their level, which is why I believe wholeheartedly that we need to diversify teaching and,
Yes.
admin. But we have to try to figure out the why. No matter, like, what past we have. We
Yeah.
have to come into it with a detective. I call it my behavior detective lens.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's also like just equitability as well. When I was thinking about changing my name, like my business name, because I'm changing Ace for Ashlyn on Instagram eventually, but I've been changing all my other stuff to the Conscious Connection group. I
Mhm,
was strongly considering unconditional EDU as well, because education should be unconditional. And what we're asking our children to do is to fit into this box, when instead we need to change the box into whatever shape they need to help
mhm,
them rewrite a system where we don't need to have these shapes and we all can just learn. And that's kind of my why behind everything I do. That's why I do conscious classroom management, because I think we need to teach our kids the skills they need to succeed in school and life so that they can
mhm,
rewrite this game of school.
mhm. It's beautiful.
Thank you. There was something else I wanted to add to that as well, in terms of like the perspective of teachers on students. I also think it can be very much like your own personal culture and how you
Mm,
handle resistance. Because I did not particularly enjoy school. Actually, like cried every single day going to school. I was very anxious about it, but yet somehow I'm here and I
mhm,
became a teacher. Um, but I knew how to play the game, if you will. Like I learned the rules of the game for
mhm,
school. And when I say the rules of the game, what I mean is like I learned how to be quiet when I needed to. I learned how to get on the teacher's good side. I learned the way to take notes, the way that I understood. I learned how I learn. I learned like, oh, I have to join all these clubs to get recommendations for college. If I get this, my grades are up here, I can get a scholarship for college and I can afford to go. Like I was navigating this system that wasn't, it's not built well in a way
mhm,
that benefited me. But I learned how to do those skills. And some I was taught, some I kind of figured out for myself as well. But when I came into the classroom and I saw resistance, it wasn't so much like I couldn't relate to the kids, because like I also like hated going to school every single day. But it was more so I could not understand why they would speak to an adult the way I was being spoken to, because I would have never done that. And that was where my disconnect was. So I think your disconnects can come from all over the place in
mm,
terms of like how you were raised and like what you view as good and bad. Because like I knew like if I were to like speak to my parents in that way, I would have had like a huge punishment for it. And so that led me to such like deficit based thinking
mm,
about the students and those behaviors instead of just asking why.
right. And I would say, so learning when we have to address that, learning to play the game is very dependent on the privileges and the resources that you have available,
Absolutely.
and that when you have nothing to lose, cussing out your teacher, who is like the symbol of the system,
Hmm.
um, it's you have everything to gain from it, because they to the students, they're the cause of the anger,
Hmm.
all that anger that is, carried through the home when they go home, and they, don't have their parents there, or they have parents there, and it's just a battle with them.
Hmm.
Um and the environment and the community that treats them like they should be feared,
Yeah.
and that they are like that they're what did he say? He said, as criminals in the making.
Yeah.
Um so they're gonna cuss us out. And that's why
Hmm.
when kids cussed me out, I understood.
Hmm.
I got it 100%. And that's why, I mean, it never triggered me, because in like, I think if it did anything, it made me sad that they carried all that anger with them, and that they had
Hmm.
to, because
And
they don't deserve that.
that's the power too. Like if you don't start there, because like I didn't start there,
Right.
but now I got in there.
Yeah.
And that's the rewiring of your brain and also the
Mhm.
power of the narrative that you tell yourself about a behavior. Because we
Yeah.
make up stories for everything. Someone
Yep.
cuts us off on the road. We either can tell ourselves, oh, they're an asshole, or we
Yep.
can tell ourselves maybe they were in a rush. Like maybe their child like got sick at
Yep.
school. Like we make up all these stories all the time that affect our mood, that affect the way we
Mhm.
view each other. I
Yeah.
even saw this one study about like people who smile at people on the street more, like feel like the world is a kinder place than people who don't.
Mhm. Oh,
You
yeah.
know? So when we're interacting with behaviors in the classroom, the story that we tell ourselves about the kid needs to
Mhm.
be as positive as possible and the most asset based as possible. And I think,
So oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, you can go. You can go.
I was just gonna say, so, one of the habits that I've formed, and now I actually say it out loud so my daughter can hear me, that if somebody is driving like a total butt, I'm like, "Oh, they must be on the way to the hospital." And
Oh.
and I really do believe, like, I really do now believe that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like, even if I'm totally wrong,
Yeah.
the only person that it, like,
Affects is you.
positively impacts is me,
Yeah.
and they could be on their way to the hospital, to maybe
Yeah.
their kid is, got in an accident, or their
Yeah.
wife or their husband, like, there's not, and it's a super easy habit to make,
Hmm.
like,
No,
changes
it's
your outlook.
a big thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've been even saying, like, when things happen, I've been trying to rewire my brain from being like, "Oh my gosh, this would happen to me," to be like, "Oh, thank you God that like this didn't get worse." Like my salad
Yeah.
yesterday, like I almost knocked it completely onto my lap at school. And like my pre-wire brain would have been like, "Oh my gosh, Ashley, how could you do that? You're so clumsy." But I was like, "Oh, thank you God, did not fall all the way out. I still have
Mhm.
some lunch." And I saw this video, I don't even know when, on the Instagram doom scroll a few months back of this mom who played like the bright side game with their child, where they would be like, "Oh, I forgot my lunch." And the kid would be like, "But at least I have a snack." And then the mom would be like, "Oh, the parking space by the door is taken. Well, at least it's a nice day for a walk." And I loved that. It's such
That's
a
awesome.
great idea.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do. So I think now we probably should move in, because I'm talking for a minute. We probably should move
Yep.
into our action step we have for teachers to take with them into this next week, or educators in general.
Yeah. Uh, so my action step is going to intertwine with the my blog post for December, and it's also uh, relates to the first workshop that I'm doing. I'm hosting a workshop series. It's a 3-month workshop series that features a different workshop every month. And the first workshop that you'll get, which is actually recorded, it's a bonus workshop, is all on habits. So the action step that I have is to use habits to retrain your brain, or to train your brain to react positively to irritating, frustrating behavior in the classroom, so that when you face that behavior, your instinct isn't to go, "Oh my God, again, da da da, this student is always doing this. Look at that sun.
I know, it's bright.
It's beautiful. It's holy." Okay. So so you can train your brain to react positively, and it can become automatic, and it can become habitual. It takes practice, it takes time, but it's totally possible. And you can start with just the thinking that Ash and I have been talking about, where if you're prompted by um, a negative situation or a challenging behavior, you come up with a phrase, something to say, keep it consistent, pair it with that behavior,
Mhm.
pair it with that challenging moment, and then do um, a little inner celebration, like, I'm awesome, or like, I'm such a kind person.
Love that.
Some affirmation. So you're changing you have the prompt, which is inappropriate behavior or frustrating behavior from the student. Pair it with a a positive thought, something that brings you a little bit of joy, and then do a little inner celebration, which is can be that affirmation. That's my action step.
I love it. And mine is a bit more short and sweet, but it's the fact that if you're here and you're listening to this podcast on your free time, or you're doing this book club with us, you're a good teacher and you're in this for the right reasons.
Aw.
And how you're going to lose your cool and you're going to have those moments, because they happen to all of us. But you learn and you grow from it. And we get better every single day by learning those things. And how there's a lot of power in modeling that.
I love that.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you. What do the kids do? They do this. I'm making hearts with my
Oh,
hands if you're
I
listening.
do that with them too. It's
Yeah.
grand. It's a great
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. That
Well,
is episode 2.
episode 2. So I guess now we'll do our sign off. Are you ready for it, Brittany?
Yeah, I just say my name, right?
I think so. I'll do a little more. We'll cut all this
Okay.
stuff out, like the actual
I know.
flowing podcast version on Spotify. But you guys on
Will
Instagram, you get the live stuff. I don't know. You're the one who edits it, but
I know. I don't do that. I leave
this
it
is not gonna
all
get
in,
cut
baby.
out. Oh man. Well, if you're still listening, thank you for being here. I'm Ashlyn,
I'm Brittany.
and we are
The Ignited
Podcast.
Podcast.
Still not in sync, but we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we forgot remoralizing and re-energizing.
Oh, crap. And we hope you feel remoralized.
And re-energized.
And we'll end on that one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.